We get to go hiking, bagels here. We have full stomachs with probably, hopefully, organic food that's good for us, except for Lindsay, who does eat a lot of deep fried stuff.
I love vegan junk food.
Yeah. But in any case, you're healthy and great in spite of, or helped by a stomach full of deep fried something weird. But those moments of, oh, this is great. And there's almost always something, and again, it might sound like privilege, but there's almost always something great. Mm-hmm. Like I had a question recently, what would my death row meal be? My last meal. And I didn't even have to think about it. Were we talking about this? Mm-hmm. No. Okay, so 3 walnuts, 3 perfect organic walnuts, an organic orange, maybe just that. Because the amount, I almost feel like if you can't be happy eating a slice of a perfect organic orange, nothing's going to make you happy. If you can fully invest yourself in that, recognizing how miraculous it is that this orange has even come into existence and that it's delicious and it's good for you and it's fun to eat, that to me, which I clearly expect and assume most people would be dismissive of everything I just said, but I just don't know anyone who's found happiness with the bigger things if you can't find happiness with the basic things.
Doomie's has a buffalo wing.
I like how basically I distracted Lindsay by mentioning vegan junk food. Everything else, she's like, it's like those cartoons where if you're hungry, the person turns into a hot dog.
Their eyes go.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and so basically everything I said, Lindsay was just hearing deep fried garbage, deep fried
You're talking
garbage.
about an orange, and I'm like, ew.
You're like, can you deep fry the orange?
Yeah.
And by orange, do you mean triple fried with Oreos?
Yeah, I don't know what a vegan turducken is, but that.
Well, I think what you're saying is, and I wrote this down as one of the, I want to, in the time we have left, talk about addiction a little bit, because, and I think it relates to this a little bit of with finding happiness in what's in front of you or keeping it in the day. And I think when we're not doing that, we're trying to fill some sort of existential, God-sized hole, mm-hmm. as they say, right? And
hungry ghosts.
Exactly. We're all, and I think about that so much, I am trying to fill it with one more snack, or maybe I need to, and some of it's conscious, some of it's subconscious, and then maybe becomes conscious, but the dough and dress or the castle or whatever it might be, right? It's really addiction. And so I guess you mentioned spirituality a little bit, and I think, maybe we can flow these two together, but I'm curious where you both are on the spirituality, God situation. And I think I heard, were you, before the album that you mentioned came out, you were like evangelical, or did I?
I have a very bizarre spiritual background. My mom was a hippie who was into everything. My grandfather worked on Wall Street, and he taught at a Presbyterian Sunday school. So like quintessential WASP from Darien, Connecticut. My grandmother volunteered at the local Presbyterian church. And my mom, the hippie, was into Krishnamurti. She threw the I Ching. She had tarot cards. She liked Jesus a lot. She's just into everything. And
cool.
So like growing up, we would go to tarot card readings. We would go, so spirituality was a big part of my life in the most dilettantish hippie way. And then I became a punk rocker. I embraced some punk rock values of like reading Nietzsche, reading Aleister Crowley, embracing the surrealists and the Dadaists. And
you studied philosophy?
I was a philosophy major, and so I was reading, Bertrand Russell and, Kant, Carnap and Tarski and all the people you can mention and make people think you're smarter than you are. So I was like into everything, into nihilism, but also into quantum mechanics and into who knows what. And then I became a Christian when I was around 22 years old. And so for 8 years, I was a very serious Christian.
How did that happen?
I was DJing at an all ages club that was sponsored by this Christian organization. And
They gotcha.
they indoctrinated me. And it was because it was very intellectual as well. It was like Kierkegaardian, Thomas Merton style Christianity. Like C.S. Lewis was sort of their patron saint. And so I could be an intellectual and a Christian, and I could also be smug and judgmental and look down on other people.
We're
So
not regular Christians. We're the
we're
smart
we're the
Christians.
Kierkegaardian Christians. We're existential Christians, but we're still dicks. And then I realized that my Christianity had everything to do with fear and control personally. Like I was so afraid of the world, and I was so afraid of the complexity and mess of the world that I found refuge in this dogma and rigidity. And then I jettisoned that in the 90s and became a crazy alcoholic drug addict. And now, after being sober, after trying everything, my spirituality is one of, it's best summed up in the third step of the 12 steps, which says, made a decision to turn our life and will over to the care of God as we understood God. When I first did that step, I wrestled with it until I realized the God of my understanding is a God I can't possibly understand. But I somehow naively, foolishly, presumptuously think that there is a divine force, a universal spirit, and I like thinking about it. I like hiking and trying to understand it better. I like talking to it. I don't know what it is or even that it is, but I like to engage with it as best I can. And if someone says you're wrong, I'm like, yeah, probably. But it's still that humble belief that there is certainly something greater than humanity. Like humanity is like scared and vicious. Like when I look at nature outside of humanity, to me, there's so much power and strength there. I don't know what to call it, but that's my spirituality.
Sure. It's almost like you had a homecoming in a way to where you began with the openness of your mom. But I'm curious about, you kind of glossed over the part about you get indoctrinated. I just think this is really interesting. Like you get indoctrinated into this smart Christians and then 8 years go by and you're in that. And then you go into, being an addict and then eventually getting sober. That's a pretty stark contrast. Like what was was there an inciting incident to get you out of that?
And it was, yes, there was such an odd inciting incident, incited it.
I went for it.
But it's so odd. I mean, a lot of stuff that makes sense in my weird addled brain. When I say it out loud, I'm like, oh boy, I'm just a crazy person. I feel like Lindsay and Bagel are very good at humoring me.
I feel like that about most of the things I say. Yeah. So.
So here's my inciting incident, which I think was wonderful. I don't expect it to make sense to anyone. Hopefully it will. Maybe it won't. I don't know. I was wrestling with my faith. This was 1995. Time had passed and I was like, oh, the dogma of Christianity seems so arbitrary. And Christian culture seems so fear-driven and tribal and provincial. I was like, am I really a part of this? I love the teachings of Christ. Forgiveness, humility, non-judgmentalism are wonderful, but I was really wrestling with, it was a crisis of faith. And I was at the corner of Bleecker and Lafayette in New York, and I saw some ants on the ground. And the middle of rush hour, people rushing everywhere. I stopped and I squatted down and for about 10 minutes just looked at the ants. And people were bumping into me. People were looking at me like, what? Assuming probably correctly that I was just an insane person. And
you're famous at this point?
Reasonably, but not relatively well known. Not like the big stuff hadn't happened yet. And I was looking at the ants and all of a sudden I had this epiphany. I was like, okay, I'm looking at thousands of ants. On the planet, there are trillions and trillions of ants. Each ant is tiny, but moving around, like they're breathing. They have optic nerves. They're so complicated. And I realized I could not begin to describe or understand one cell in an ant's optic nerve. I was like, and there are a trillion ants with each comprised of a trillion cells. And I was like, so here am I having strong opinions about the architect of the universe when I can't even understand one cell in an ant. And the absurdity of that struck me. I was like, how dare I have this dogmatic opinion about the architect of the universe when I don't even know where my fingernails come from. So the humility from that, I realized, okay, all I can do is step back and look at the universe and inhabit the universe, but I certainly can't have any dogmatic opinions about it.
Did it take some reprogramming then after that? Because here you are, like, so indoctrinated. You have this epiphany. You're like, I'm all set. I'm on to something else.
Yeah. I mean, the guilt of moving past that. But then I started drinking and doing a lot of drugs. And at first I was like, oh, this is an experiment. And then years passed, I'd be in a dive bar by myself. I was like, oh, I think I've gone past the realm of this being an experiment. I'm just a sad old drunk.
Wow. I want to talk about getting sober a little bit in a second, but I want to turn to you, Lindsay. Like, what was your experience? Like, did you grow up with, like, what is your version of that, I guess?
I grew up Roman Catholic.
Me too.
Very intense. And I had a hard time with it. I had a hard time with, like, the gender roles of all of it and the blatant misogyny and what I came to view as a disrespect for women. Because even when I had this societal teaching that women were meant to be subservient, that was the model, that was what I was modeled, it was what I was told. And so even though that was what I was being shown, I had this sense that it was wrong. And it's something I still battle, is those models. And I think many women still battle those models. But it was so blatantly misogynist. And I didn't even have a word for it then. I was just like, all of these priests are men. Everyone up on this stage is a boy, except for a woman they'll occasionally let come up and sing a song or read out of their book that was only written by men. It just felt so male in a way that felt, I was like, something's wrong. Something's wrong here. And I also started to see people in my life using religion to exercise violence on other people, to exercise violence on gay people. I also, around this time, starting to be like, am I into the ladies? I was kind of wrestling these feelings of, not only am I a woman, which my church only thinks is for procreating and, being subservient, but I also am, and I never have read this in the Bible, but the society around this church believes that is wrong as well. And I remember I was in college and I was having this kind of crisis of faith. And I went to a church that was in town in San Marcos, Texas, and I asked the priest something about this and this struggle. And he became uncomfortable and told me to leave. And I was like, yeah,
that's a pretty avoidant.
How interesting that a priest would be uncomfortable with a woman asking about sexuality.
It wasn't even sexuality that I was asking about. I was asking about women and why women were portrayed in this way. I couldn't understand it. I was like, spiritually, how am I supposed to feel vast and feel trusting when this is... it was a crisis of faith, and he turned me away. And I was like, something's wrong here. And so I stopped going to church, much to my family's dismay. But I have found, but then for a while I was like, maybe I'm an atheist. Maybe I don't believe in God. Maybe because of this crisis of faith that I had, I was like, maybe because the church wasn't real, God isn't real. And more recently, through 12-step programs, not necessarily the beverage program, but other programs of the 12-step ideology, have started to rethink my perspective on what a divine presence is and the power of that. Because I've also come to understand that if you don't have a God in your mind, you'll start to make things around you into God. You'll start to make booze into God. You'll start to make people you're dating into God. You'll start to make a political figure into God. And that's when your life starts to just really get a little topsy-turvy. So I think that the importance of having this concept and reverence for a divine presence that is no person, that is no thing that exists elsewhere is of the utmost importance. And I'm honestly a little bit sad that my experience of Roman Catholicism turned me away from that for such a long time.
Yeah, I mean, it's like what I was saying, we turn to where there's that David Foster Wallace thing of whatever you worship, like it's the trying to fill the God-sized hole, I guess.
Yeah.
Were you going to say something, Moby?
No, I just had to hit save on the Pro Tools.
Oh, thank you. Phew.
I wonder though, I feel like we might want to.
Yeah, I'm going to wrap us up.
Okay.
Okay.
We could keep going.
I know.
but-
Maybe we'll do a part 2 someday.
Yeah.
I mean,
It'd be a 3-parter already.
do you have a second for me to just kind of land
Of
this?
course.
plane?
Yeah.
All right. I'll just hit on the addiction thing, and then we'll get out of here. But thank you. I think that also was my experience. But I think there's some sort of contrast between the Catholic and the Christian. Of we have so much circumstantial stuff where my friends who grew up Christian have that Jesus is your friend, and there's just a lot of deprogramming. And I think 12-step stuff is good with that. I think related to this conversation that we're having now, you've spoken a lot about meeting your heroes, and there's one instance in particular that you told Rick Rubin about how you had the opportunity to meet Neil Young and you said no. Can you talk about why you did that?
Yeah. So in the course of my life, I think I mentioned this earlier, I never expected to have any success as a musician. I never expected to have a record deal. I never expected to make music that anyone listened to. I never expected to play concerts that people came to. I really thought I was going to spend my life as a weird academic who made music that no one ever listened to. And then lo and behold, I started having an audience for my music. And then I started being asked to produce and remix other artists or collaborate with other artists. I mean, the list of people I've worked with is so extensive and baffling, from Ozzy Osbourne to Britney Spears to Daft Punk to the Beastie Boys to Freddie Mercury to Outkast to, just on and on and on. Like this long, crazy list from Michael Jackson to Soundgarden. And so I've been able to meet so many of my heroes and work with a lot of my heroes. And in some cases, you meet your heroes and it's great. Like becoming friends with David Lynch made me like his movies more because he's such a delightful person. But there have been some instances that I won't mention where like meeting the person made a challenge to continue to like their work because they were just narcissistic or not nice or what have you. And I was at a party a few years ago and Neil Young was there. And a friend of mine said, "Hey, do you want to meet Neil Young?" And I was like, "Of course I do," because I love Neil Young. I love Neil Young's music. But then that moment, I was like, what if he's having a bad day? What if he's not nice to me? It's going to make it hard for me to love his music as much. And I thought I would err on the side of caution and not meet Neil Young and continue to have this uncompromised love for his music. By the way, I'm sure he's great, but I didn't want to risk it. And why risk a bunch of your favorite songs for a handshake and a picture that goes on Instagram? It just didn't seem worth it at the time.
I've felt that way even with this when I've had the opportunity to talk to somebody that I liked their book or their music or their podcast or whatever it is. I always am nervous, mostly because like, oh man, it would color the way we think about people. So I just think that's really interesting. Have you ever, the reason I wanted to ask that was because I'm curious if on the other side of that, with people meeting you who are big fans, and you can tell, because I think, we can tell when people have put us on a pedestal, even if you're not famous, we do that with people. Mm-hmm. And have you felt that pressure to like, be cool, you don't want to ruin this for them? How do you handle that?
Well, pre-sobriety, there were a few occasions where I think people didn't see me at my best, either drunk, hungover, or narcissistic and entitled. But I try very hard. It's not a struggle, but I try to be respectful of people where they are. And so I certainly, anybody who's willing to make the effort to talk to me, who wants a picture or whatever, I always just say yes. And I try to be as polite as possible, because why not? I don't understand the public figures who like have a contemptuous attitude towards their supporters or fans. That's so weird. And also, if you're going to be dismissive or contemptuous towards people, why do you go out into public? I've never understood that. Like, when you go out into public, you're no longer a private person. You are, if you're a public figure and you're in public, you're at Nobu or a red carpet event, it's real hard to say, please leave me alone, I'm being private. You're on a red carpet. You're on La Cienega surrounded by paparazzi. That's not, it's a lot different. Like if you're home watching a 30 Rock episode and someone breaks into your house to get a selfie, I can understand being put out there.
Or even at the airport or like somewhere else.
But I do think, so I just try very hard. I don't have people beating down my door trying to get a selfie with me or whatever, but I try to be as polite and respectful as possible.
Well, this has been a delight. I'm so grateful for both of you taking the time. And like I said, I didn't look at my notes except one time. So hopefully we do this again
I feel
someday.
like we have to apologize to you, because I feel like we took so much of your time. Like Lindsay, I think we're terrible interview subjects. I think we monopolized. Like, I'm sure that like 45 minutes ago, you were like, come on, guys, I'm hungry. I have to go to the bathroom. Please let me leave.
We're very much like, and another thing.
Well, I don't even know if you know that the name of this podcast is, if he told you, but it's called Let It Out. So we always end by letting out a deep breath together. But by the nature of the beast, it is long, and you've met me. So
Did I jump the gun on letting out a deep breath? I think
No.
I don't think you
did.
can
Let's
do
all
too
do it
many.
together. Yeah.
Okay.
I think the more the better.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ready, bagel?
Bagel.
Okay. Inhale. Let it out.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
It always feels better, right?
Yeah.
I think maybe I should start with that.
Yeah.
But then you'd have a very calm podcast.
More like an
Which
ASMR
might be nice.
Yeah.
cat style.
But that's my thing. I try to get people, I think about 45 minutes in, we sort of forgot we were doing this and just became friends, hopefully. Yeah.
Okay, well, let me turn off Pro Tools.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you guys so much. Was there anything else you wanted to get in here before we do
We got
stop?
so much in here.
Oh, man. All right. Well, I'm really glad we're doing this. I feel very warmed up, but I was thinking on the drive over here, listening to both of you, and I kind of had to pull myself away from my spending time with you the last couple of days preparing for this. And I was sort of annoyed to have to get out of my car and stop the episode to come listen to you in real life, which was so silly. And the episode I was listening to is my favorite so far, where you are talking about anxiety and music, and at one point you go through a song and break down how you make an ambient track. And there's this very sweet moment in particular where you, Lindsay, well, Moby, actually, you say to Lindsay, oh, you love this. Like, this is your favorite part. And I forget what exactly it was called.
It's a back and forthy.
Yeah, it's a special sort of audio stereo trick where you pan things left and right. Because saying to someone like, this is your favorite part, could sound presumptuous, or except that Lindsay has repeatedly said how much she loves when audio pans back and forth.
Yeah. Well, the reason I bring it up is because that exact thing is so cozy to me when someone, like, I kind of making fun of, and if it is from someone that knows you and loves you, it's sweet because it just shows that they see you and know you, and like it's intimacy. So it was such a sweet moment of your friendship that I really loved, and that goes throughout all of these episodes. And there's a lot of duos in podcasting, and there's several that I can think of that I'm sure you both can think of from back in radio time to now. There's something that only a duo can do. However, when it works, it works. And when it doesn't, it super doesn't. And you two have such a lovely dynamic. So I'm curious, like I said, it shows that you're really good friends and have this very sweet friendship, that you have these bits that you do with each other, and there's these sweet segments. And when did you get the idea that you wanted to do a podcast together?
I guess it was about a year ago, because for the last 5 or 6 years, pretty steadily, people have been asking me to do a podcast. Because as you know, there's so many podcast companies in the world, and when I say people have been asking me to do a podcast, it's not that they thought I'd be good at it, but I feel like they were just asking everybody. Some podcast company would send out a form letter. So for years I was like, no, I kept saying no to the idea of doing a podcast. But then Lindsay and I were talking, and I realized a few things. One, just how much fun it would be to sit down once a week or every 2 weeks with Lindsay and just talk about anything, to talk about animal rights, to talk about weird jokes, to interview people we find inspiring. And just all of a sudden, it made sense to me and felt really compelling to me, not as like a revenue stream commercial exercise, which is not to malign people who are able to have revenue streams and have their podcasts be commercial. But for us, it just seemed like an organic extension of our friendship and a way to create a platform that is not contingent upon or reliant upon algorithms from big corporations. And what I mean about that is, for example, if you post something you care about on Instagram,
right?
Sometimes it does well, sometimes it fails, largely based on their algorithms. And I feel like we've got this whole generation of people who've spent all their time figuring out how to catch the algorithm. And that seems like a really odd criteria to apply to meaningful content, as opposed to just create content that you care about, have meaningful conversations, and you put it out there, and it's unfiltered, it's unalgorithmed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. The last episode that I did for this, we had a conversation. The person I was speaking with has a podcast studio, and she helps produce other people's podcasts. And so we had this very inside baseball-y podcast talk that covered a couple of those things, because I started doing this in 2013.
Wow.
It was really different
when you were 9.
22. But I've seen it change so much, as we all have. No one knew what a podcast was then. So the fact that mine was on iTunes was oh, she's on iTunes, when really there's no gatekeepers, anybody could. I just figured it out.
Kind of saying wow, she's on the internet.
Yeah, exactly. But back then, it was kind of, no one, people didn't even know what a
podcast was in 2013.
Yeah.
I remember back then, I kept trying to listen to them. And I was like, how do you find podcasts? And it seemed like it was this cool hidden world that I just couldn't figure out.
A lot of people felt like that.
And I think, do you need to get a special app? Do you need to have special headphones? Do you have to join a club?
Totally. For so long, first of all, it was kind of embarrassing. I mean, it's still, and I think now it's more embarrassing because it's more mainstream, anyway, but that's one other conversation of what is cool. But I would say, I have this podcast, and kind of whisper it, and people would be like, yeah, exactly. What is it on your phone? Is it on TV? Nobody really knew. But anyway, the person I was talking to, we were having this conversation about all of these changes. And she said the same thing of now, she had just been to a summer camp where she talked to these teen girls about, it was an audio summer camp, which is so cool.
That's amazing.
I know, right? And she, talked to them about podcasting and I was like, tell me everything. Are they into it? Do they think it's cool? Where do they listen? What are they saying? And she's like, yeah, they're into it. None of them listen on iTunes, but they all listen on Spotify, and they're really into this and this and this. And then what she was saying is to your point, what's cool about this medium is that we're not chasing the algorithm. When you have the way we listen isn't related to that. And the skill of chasing an algorithm is so untransferable, like learning to make things, whether people see it or not, like that will help you in the future. But chasing the algorithm is not a transferable skill because the algorithm changes. It's silly, like also out of our control, sort of, I think. And anyway, I just agree.
And the one thing I will also say is since we started doing this, and this might sound a little bit esoteric or flowery, but I've come to see podcasting in general, not all of them, but as being sort of a sacred, magical space. Mm. And I know that might sound silly to a lot of people because they're like, it's podcasting, it's not sacred, it's not magical. But where else in life do you have people who sit down, aspire to have meaningful conversations and listen to each other?
Mm-hmm. And aren't on their phones. And there's also no distractions from, even if the three of us were out to dinner right now and not on our phones or on a walk, which is also fun, like if we did a hike together, but it's a different thing because we'd be like, oh my God, there's a turtle, and there's more distractible. But this year...
To be fair, now I got excited. I was like, you've seen turtles in Griffith Park?
No, but the hike that I do every day. Have you guys ever done Debs?
I love
Park?
Debs.
Yeah.
There's lots of turtles over there.
I'll show you.
Oh,
I can show you photos on my phone after this because I took a ton today.
It's a great hike.
Yeah, I do it every morning, but I have to go so early.
Yeah.
But yeah, even like my friends who are like super smart and funny, when we meet up, it tends to just be like sardonic banter.
Yeah.
Like you don't sit down and listen. You don't talk in a meaningful way. And so the longer we've been doing this, I've come to really like have this almost like reverence for podcasting. And obviously not all of it. Like there's a lot of like, people who are like, oh, we need to make money, so let's have a podcast about a murder in New Jersey or something. Like the people who are sort of like chasing the podcast algorithm the trend. But apart from that, like it's people using this space like yourself to address, or at least either address or aspire to addressing meaningful things.
Well, I think, and I'm curious if this has been your experience with the two of you, because just by having this piece of machinery between all of us and me having a container of like someone pulling the thread, and often Lindsay, in the case of your show with Moby, it's you who, has the agenda of like making sure that this topic is covered. And I think that having those two things allow conversations to go into different places than they would even, for the sake of argument, like even if we were not recording, and I've talked to strangers, of course, in this format. And, then I'm asking questions and directing it to places. But I've also found that I've had some of my best friends on this, and it's such a different conversation than I'd have with them elsewhere. And I found out things that I never would have. Has that been your experience from doing this? Have you learned more about Moby?
Well, I've learned more about Moby, but also I feel like it's very rare that you sit down to have a conversation with someone and you're like, okay, start from the beginning.
Yeah.
From the minute you were born, I want to know why you are the way that you are. I feel like if you say that to someone at like a dinner party, they're like, whoa.
Yeah.
This is a lot. This is not the right time. You know what I mean?
Unless they're like a public figure narcissist.
And they're like, great.
And they're like, let me just open my Wikipedia page and I'll recite it to you.
Yeah.
Read this.
Yeah. I mean, it's rare that you get to go so deep with another person in the container of, a podcast interview. It's great. It's a way to have a meaningful conversation that you don't really get elsewhere. So.
Yeah. What has this felt like to you? So you said about, several years ago, people came to you wanting to do a podcast. And then how did the two of you decide that you would do this? Do you listen to a lot of podcasts? Were you excited about the idea?
I love podcasts. I listen to podcasts every day, most days. And we were trying to figure out what to do. We were like, okay, podcast. Let's try it. And we were trying to figure out what our in was, like what, and we actually did some like kind of practice episodes with friends of like, how could this work? What is this going to be? We thought we were going to do a fully different thing that was only about, I don't know if we were going to do one that was only about creativity that was called The Silliest Name on the Planet, which is the creative Block Ness Monster.
Oh, I kind of like that.
To be fair, Lindsay came up with the title.
I love it.
I love it. But if you want puns that you both will adore and be made uncomfortable by, Lindsay is very good at that.
I'm really good at uncomfortable puns that make you both cringe and, you know, laugh with glee.
Well, if that's any indication, I'm in.
But then we decided that felt a little bit like it was painting us into a corner creatively, and we wanted to be able to have conversations with people that was anyone about anything, as long as it felt meaningful to us. So we decided to keep it a little bit more general, though I do think one day we should post the graphic of us with our heads on the Loch Ness Monster bodies.
Yeah, our friend Mike made a graphic for the creative Loch Ness Monster, and it's 2 Loch Ness Monsters with the most rudimentary Photoshop of our faces as the heads of these Loch Ness Monsters.
Oh my God.
It looks like it was done in 1990, intentionally, because he's a really gifted designer, but he made it look like he's like a junior in high school who made it in 1998.
If you can send it to me, can I post it with this episode?
Yes. We still have it yet. Do you have
I have it.
Okay, great.
Wow. I'm also kind of like, maybe hold on. Maybe we edit this out, because that could be a future idea. I think that has legs, or whatever the Loch Ness Monster swims with.
That has mythical fins.
Yeah, totally.
Flippers.
Yeah, yeah. I'm kind of into that. So he comes to you, you know, with the idea, and you were like, I'm in.
Mm-hmm. Well, Moby had a production company called Little Walnut, and in the pandemic, I was furloughed from my other production company job where I was working in development, and I was talking to Moby, and I was like, I don't know, I feel like I want to work in development, but at a company that I really care about what they're doing, and it has something to do with animal rights or the environment or climate change or something. And a few weeks later, he was like, well, why don't you come run my company, Little Walnut? So we've been working on a ton of stuff and trying to figure out how we can make content that addresses animal rights and animal cruelty and veganism and climate change and mental health and all the things that we care about. And the podcast felt like the perfect place to talk about all those things whenever we want, with whoever we want. And it felt like it made so much sense. Yeah. And it has so far.
Yeah, it's your blank canvas, because I guess thinking about that episode that I mentioned with the ambient music, like that feels like something that could have been, especially the act 2 of it, where you go through the track, that seems like something that could have been on the creative Loch Ness Monster, and you're doing it, you know?
Yeah. But then we've also gotten to talk to amazing activists and psychiatrists and, you know, these mental health professionals that bring their own creativity to these very important jobs and vocations that they've undertaken. So it's been great to get to expand it out in that way too.
Yeah, it gives you more freedom than the previous idea would have, but you're also able to do that, which is great. It seems like you guys have this cadence with each other, and like I said, this familiarity that works really well on this platform.
For what it's worth, I'm glad that you're not drinking coffee.
Oh, yeah.
The reason being, I have made one of the worst cups of coffee I've ever had in my entire. This is so, I'm like, I rarely have coffee.
But wait, why is it bad? You would think you'd have your, like, you know, your methodology worked out.
But so I think what happened was I bought, or do you remember, I briefly had a house up in Idlewild, California, which is this beautiful mountain town about 2 hours from here.
I've always wanted to go. It's beautiful.
It's really special. It's a magical, wonderful place. And I had a house there briefly. And when I moved into that house, I bought a bag of organic coffee. This was about 4 years ago.
Oh, no.
And that bag of organic coffee then moved, when I sold the house up there, it moved back to Los Angeles with me. And it's just been sitting for 4 years. And I don't think 4 years of ground coffee sitting in the fridge in a bag has done it any favors. So like,
I think the beans might have survived, but a ground
As
bean,
soon as you said ground, I know, same.
yeah, it's got a shorter shelf life.
yeah, so this is, I would be so ashamed if I had made you a cup of coffee and you were drinking it. Because I'm sure, because you're such a nice person, you'd be polite and you'd be like, no, it's fine. And then you would leave and you'd be like, wow, I really enjoyed talking to Moby and Lindsay, but that was the worst cup of coffee anyone has ever made in the history of bad cups of coffee.
And then you wouldn't release our podcast, and then you would just make a whole episode about how bad Moby's coffee making skills
Yeah, because
are.
everyone knows you as being a coffee maker.
Why am I still drinking it?
Though it is fun to watch you endure that cup of coffee, even though we both know that you hate it and it's old ground. Like,
I mean, it still has caffeine, I assume, but it's so gross. Okay, so I don't know if this
The
is
caffeine
any...
also has to dwindle. One would think.
I can't do it. I can't.
I think don't even
no.
endure it for the caffeine, because I feel like that probably if the taste has gone diminished that much, the caffeine we have to assume it
One
has to as
assumes,
well.
yeah.
well, wait,
So-
what should we do? Do you want to go make a different cup of coffee?
No, because I don't have any other coffee.
Oh,
So I'm going to
God.
let you guys talk for a second. And I'm going to just go dump this off the railing.
Okay.
So for the next 30 seconds, I will be dumping this terrible cup
Because
of coffee.
we can't even have that coffee in here. It has to
Wow.
be in the dirt where it
Do you want to
belongs.
smell it? It's Ross?
Yeah.
I'll smell it, yeah.
I kind of want to. I kind of am curious to taste it. Like, what does terrible
Okay, it
coffee
doesn't smell
taste
that
like?
bad to me.
I mean,
But it
That- I
probably
didn't drink
tastes.
from that thought,
Is
if
it
you
like
wanna-
very acidic or something?
no, it just tastes like gross.
It's not. It's bad. I don't even know coffee well.
I don't know how
But
it
you know
wasn't-
enough to know. Is it
it
like very
wasn't good.
acidic?
No, not at all.
Just wrong.
It's hard to put it. It smells normal.
It smells perfectly fine.
Because I think coffee is just gonna smell like coffee, but it tasted.
I haven't got treats.
I don't know how to explain it. Not like that though. Not like it. But I see where you're going with it tasting acidic, like as if something has expired. Usually
That's why I had
what
to stop
happens.
drinking coffee was the acidic, because I was starting to get terrible nausea and acid reflux every time I drank
Oh,
a cup of coffee,
no.
which is why I'm drinking the matcha now.
Yeah, that happens
I
to
had
me
to do the full
sometimes.
switch.
But I try to
So
like
sad.
have it after I like eat something before.
Yes, because the
And then I'm
morning
fine.
coffee, it just started my day off where I was like,
Right.
well, I guess I'm going to be sick for the first 2 hours of my
Oh,
day.
God.
Every day.
Lovely.
Yeah.
By the way, okay, so sorry for wasting your time with
No.
both bad coffee and my long soliloquy about bad coffee. Okay.
Okay. Well, when you said that, I'm so glad you didn't say yes to a cup of coffee. I was like, oh, okay, because I thought it was like I was coming in hot, like really energized or something, and I was like, okay, but it was for a totally different reason.
Yeah.
Full of surprises.
I know. Okay, you just heard my conversation with Moby and my other new friend, Lindsay Hicks. I really loved this conversation, as I said many times in this, and you just heard it. You hopefully loved it too, if you're still here now. I'm so grateful to be back recording podcasts. I have many coming up, and I'll just give you a little update on me. Like I said, Spiraling is back in season, the show that I co-host with Serena Wolf, my friend. It's about anxiety, it's about mental health, and it's season 5, and it's releasing every other week right now. The first 2 episodes are out now. If you want to go listen to that, let me know. And if not, onward. I'll see you next week here for a fresh episode of this podcast. And I have a Substack now, like everyone does. Like everyone has a podcast, everyone has a Substack, everyone has a TikTok. I haven't downloaded TikTok onto my phone yet, but it's probably around the corner. But if you want to learn more about what's going on with me, that's probably the best place to do so. I send it out, I would say weekly, but hasn't been the case. I aim for weekly, and it goes out about once a month. And I'm here in Montreal, Canada. I did what I was calling my month away to focus on my work, my exile from social plans and being around friends all the time, which I love in LA. But I needed a little break to catch up on things, and I didn't catch up as much as I wanted to, but I did do some. And that's sort of with the last Let It Out Lists letter. That's my Substack. That's what that's about if you want to read more about that. And I started a new podcast producing gig with my good friend, Michelle. If you remember Michelle and Wallace of Holisticism and the 12th House podcast, they were on the show a couple months ago. And Wallace went to grad school, so I have been in her spot, co-hosting with Michelle over there at the 12th House. So if you want to hear even more of my voice, somehow, some way, there's a lot of me podcasting right now. 3 shows with my voice on it. It's a lot, perhaps too many. So I get it, you know? You can pick a lane or you can drive through all of them. But again, I love you. Thank you so much for being here. This podcast is edited by the incredible Brianna Bain, and I will speak to you next week. Bye-bye.